Great. You can begin, Kate.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call the meeting to order on November 22nd, 2021 at the Forest Grove District Board of Directors meeting at 5:31. I will do a roll call. Mark Everett,
Present.
Brad,
I'm here.
Val,
Here.
Narcy,
Here.
Sonia,
Here.
and I'm also here. The school board will hear public comment for unscheduled public appearances received through the designated form on the district website. Patrons who wanted to comment live via Zoom should have already registered as a participant, completed the form to provide their information, and indicated they were going to provide a live comment. If you are providing your comment live as a Zoom participant, please be sure to give your full name displayed in your Zoom profile. You can change that by clicking on the participants buttons, hover over your ID, click rename, and type in the correct information, and then select OK. Comments will be read by district staff or delivered live via Zoom at the appropriate time on the agenda and will be limited to 3 minutes. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Introductions of audience and staff, please.
John O'Neill, Assistant Superintendent.
Kim Scherer, Director of Student Services.
David
Nick
Warner.
Opinion, Technology Department.
Kevin Reen, Director of Human Resources.
Eileen Kloop, Business.
Elena, you're there.
Sorry, Elena Santana, District Literacy Pre-K 6 and Title I.
Nice seeing you.
Hi.
Is that everybody?
Yep.
Okay, good. Approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Narson.
discussion? All those in favor, Mark,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Narcy,
Yes.
Sonia? Is Sonia there? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a yes also. All right, the first item on the agenda is correspondence and celebrations.
Nothing at this point. I've got a little stuff I'll talk about in the comments.
Okay. Student representative, Sonia.
So this week we are ending Random Acts of Kindness Week. So there's been some kindness going around. I think people are excited to, have a little break. And then our clothing drive ends tomorrow if anybody was interested in donating. But what I wanted to talk about was we're starting something called Winter Wishes, which is something that other schools have done, where there's a form that went out so you can respond to it, or any other students can respond to it, and it's basically just like, what do you need? And we're gonna try and fulfill some of those wishes, if that makes sense, but only like the ones that are serious. We're not gonna be buying people new phones or anything, but we're open to donations. So we don't have an account set up yet, but if you are interested in donating, I can send any like bank account information out to you guys, or wherever you need to write a check to, if you're interested in that. And then that's what I have.
Sonia, could you send that information, email it to Kathy Branson? Okay.
I can. I'll email it when I get it. The account hasn't been set up just yet, but when it is.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions for Sonia?
Yeah, what's the timeline on that, Sonia? Do you have do you know, or?
Well, there's not like a set deadline, I guess.
Okay,
I think throughout December probably would be,
okay,
yeah.
okay. But before school goes into the holiday break, which is the 17th or 16th or something like that.
I mean, yes,
Oh,
we probably will be like finishing up at like
Yeah,
in January when we come back,
Oh.
because that's probably when stuff will like come.
oh,
But
okay,
December is probably when we would want any donations.
okay, great. Thanks.
Any other questions for Sonia? Thank you, Sonia. Calendar notes.
I will, I'm going to kind of roll through my superintendent comments. The calendar notes, we're still kind of struggling getting you all the information about what's going on in the schools. For this week, we'll be back in session next week. For this week, we have one more day. And we're off and rolling. I was out at the middle school today, and things were going well. So wanted to start today by just kind of reviewing where we're at with COVID. As I've done over the last couple of meetings, kind of trying to make sure we know what's happening. Can you see my screen? Perfect. This is Oregon's EPI curve. This is the same one that I show every single time. And again, we're continuing to see cases go down, which is this curve right here, which is good. We're starting to hear of other parts of the nation and in Europe where they're seeing a surge. Well, I'm not really seeing it from our data yet. This is our 7-day moving average. You'll notice there is a slight uptick here. I don't know if that's an aberration or whether that's something real. I met with Washington County Health today. They're unsure too. They do know that as we get together for Thanksgiving, they're anticipating that they're going to see more cases, but we're not quite sure if it's going to take off or whether, we're going to see more cases. Whether is it going to become another surge, or is this just another small increase over time? I'm not quite sure. They didn't really have a good feeling for where that is. So I think we're in an interesting time period. This is Washington County. The blue line here is the total cases. You'll notice that it dropped. We were kind of holding steady for a little while, and now in Washington County, the number of cases have dropped. The blue line down here is kind of that cases per 100,000 that we've been tracking for the last 18, 19 months. And again, we're continuing to see that line drop. Maybe not at the rates that we would like, but it's encouraging that we're starting to see it continue to move down. This is pediatric cases. It tends to lag a little bit from our other data. But again, what we're continuing to see is from the high in September, we're continuing to see these drop. This is Oregon, it's not Washington County. We don't have those numbers. And then cases by age group, we're continuing to see these drop. But the only interesting thing is the age group 5 through 11 is now above that group of 12 to 17, which has been a change. Usually the 12 to 17 have been above the other group the entire pandemic. So this is the first time that they have been below. So if I were gonna make a statement about where we're at with COVID right now in Washington County in our district is we continue to see the cases fall off, which is good news. We're worried about what the winter might bring, but I'm also, nobody that I've heard is like forecasting another surge at this point. So we're still, over the next 4, 5, 6 weeks is probably gonna be really determining as to kind of where this thing goes into next year. But right now, I don't feel too bad about where we're at. Can I answer any questions about COVID, and then I'll finish off the rest of my comments? We are running vaccine clinics for folks. I mean, we have lots of parents who are utilizing their pediatricians in the pharmacies, but we are running several clinics, hoping that folks who either have transportation issues or organization, like the language barriers keeping them from being able to make the appointments with the pharmacies, will be able to utilize ours. Nobody gets a shot without a guardian there, but we did have, at our last one, we had about 100 and, oh, hang on one sec. Let me get those numbers. We did about 171 folks got vaccinated. 117 were kids, and then 54 were adults, mostly family members who came in with their children, and we either got them boosters or got them their first. Echo Shaw will have another like December. I shouldn't quote the date because I don't, but it's like the second week of December. On Wednesday, we'll have Cornelius Elementary will host another vaccine clinic. And then we've got one more that we're looking at trying to place, and I'll get more details as we kind of get that finalized. It'll be closer to the Christmas break when we run that clinic. But that's kind of where we're at with the vaccines and that bit. OHA last week announced, and then I heard again today, that there's more changes coming to our health protocols. The first thing that they're doing is they're changing the way in which K-12 schools, they're shortening the quarantine. And this is specifically applicable to K-12 schools because of all of the other layered health protocols that we've got into place. And so they feel that they can do the shorter quarantine because of everybody's masked up. We have increased ventilation. We're keeping social distance, and all of these things make it safer for them to pick a shorter quarantine. We'll be implementing this after we get back from Thanksgiving break. We're still having to try and get some things in order, but the basic gist would be, now if you were a close contact, you would be, you'd have a 7-day quarantine, and if you test your close contact, you get quarantined. In days 5 through 7 of that quarantine, you would test, and if you're negative, you can come back on day 8. If you are positive, then we go into an isolation situation because of you have COVID. There's this will be a short quarantine. That is good. There's another. I'm hearing that this is going to get announced tomorrow, but OHA is also having to get a lot of this organized. The increased testing means we have to have more of the fast antigen tests on hand. So they're working to try and secure that, that set of tests. There's another thing that was announced last week, and that was called Test to Stay. And we're still working through the details of that. I think it will be announced tomorrow or sometime this week, but that would be an opportunity for folks who who are in our schools, who are a close contact, to be able to test as soon as we identify that they were a close contact, and then test 3 to 4 days later. And if both of those tests are negative, they get to stay in school. But there's a lot of details that we have to hear about before we can implement it yet. So that'll get implemented later. But those are all good changes for us, because the more that we can keep our kids in school, the better off we are. So I'm excited again to that there's more. I think there's some other things coming, which is the outside masking. They're going to make some changes in that and open up. I think it goes from being mandatory to being a recommended practice. So there's some other pieces that are going to get announced in the coming weeks to try and work with some of these protocols. And then last Saturday, we had the Migrant Parent Advisory was hosted at Neil Armstrong. approximately 30 migrant parent leaders representing all the schools in our district, and a high school representative gathered as a community to learn about effective ways to get parents involved in our schools. The participants were extremely excited and felt empowered to develop and exercise their leadership skills, as well as continue their equity journey with a sense of purpose. Childcare was prevented. We had about 20 children. They participated in a number of fun academic and recreational activities. We're proud to announce that the Migrant Parent Advisory Committee has been officially formed, and the core leadership members have been elected. So that was great news. I know Oz was very excited about getting rolling on that. And then my last comment would be just Thanksgiving. This is a shortened week. We have school today and tomorrow. I want to wish everyone, our teachers, our staff, our administrators, our students, our parents, a restful Thanksgiving break. As I mentioned in my communications last Friday, the holidays can be a really stressful time for many of our families, for our staff. As we move into these next 3 weeks before the holidays, just important for all of us to take some time this week to relax and rejuvenate and come back ready for a strong 3 weeks going into the Christmas break. So I want to wish everyone a happy and restful Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions for Dave? Okay, we'll move on to unscheduled public appearances. The board appreciates community members sharing information during public comments. Public comments should be submitted through the designated form and will be read by district staff or registered Zoom participants who indicated through the form they wanted to provide their comment live. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes, as is the protocol for board meetings. Public criticism or complaints about school district personnel are not allowed at this time. I believe tonight we have 4 comments. A district staff member will be timing the comments. They will alert you with 1 minute remaining. And I think they're emails. So is David going to read those comments?
Yeah,
Okay, thanks, David.
of course. You're welcome. All right, our first comment is from Jennifer Bichek, who is a teacher, and it reads, "Last week I listened to the 2 different board meetings and reminded my students to have their parents check their email to let their voices be heard. After the results, my students were asking me questions about the process and results. This comment is a collection of their thoughts that I have put together at their request. In previous meetings, we heard you say that you are worried about our students, worried about winter weather, worried about their future spring selves. A survey was created to get parent and staff feedback, and a majority of the respondents said our kids need a break and our teachers need time to plan/grade. This week, multiple students have cried in classes. The pandemic is not over, and the students feel the stress of it, along with the stress from being back in school. Tests, workloads, sports, CLCs, all on top of pandemic concerns. Students were not surveyed, so their parents and teachers filled out the survey with their children in mind. They are people who see the kids every day and see what they are going through. The next survey that goes out, please give more consideration to the results that you requested. We can solve future problems if and why they arise. Thank you for your time and consideration, Mrs. Bichek." The second one is from Julia Ray, who is an elementary teacher. It says, "I think surveys are made by the district to make teachers feel like they have input. But when I take the time to share my opinion, the board votes how they want to anyway. If this is always going to be the case, can we stop getting surveys sent to us?" Number 3, this is from Diana Smith, who's a teacher. "I've spoken with retired teachers about subbing for our school district. Their reason for not subbing is about health benefits. If we were able to offer an incentive that provides insurance, we could probably secure a pool of highly qualified retired teachers. Have we as a district thought about this idea at all?" Number 3 is from Nancy Garcia, who is a kindergarten teacher. "The past decision made by this board to not support teachers and giving them more time to plan was nothing short of disappointing. Teachers are beyond exhausted, and parents had also agreed to have Monday and Tuesday of this week off. This leads me to question this board's ability to put the well-being of teachers on the top of their priority list along with our students. How does this board plan to support teachers during a time like this when there are very few subs, teachers are quitting from exhaustion, and the little time we ask to plan is denied us? That's all four.
Thank you, David. I would like to make a response to the teachers. This was a difficult decision. It was a calendar decision put before the board. It was a difficult decision because it was looking at the data and students and instructional time or prep or planning time for the teachers. It was an either or. And going forward, the superintendent and the administrators will be working with the union and the teachers on looking at their work needs and what those solutions will be. And at our next board meeting in December, the board will also be listening to the staff and seeing what we can do to help with the workload issues. Does any other board members wish to make a comment?
Okay, this is Narsa. Thank you for your comments. I also just want to add that if our teachers can also, it was really a very difficult decision to make with the information that we had, and also trying to keep a balance for all of it. And it's difficult, but there's certainly not. I can speak for myself in regards to, and I probably for all, I would assume that I certainly validate our teachers. I know that they're working hard. I can imagine how difficult this is. I'm in higher ed, so I see the same thing from our faculty and our students. So just wanted to call about the validation. And I do like what you said, Kate, about working with the union and looking at other solutions that we can do to see what it is that we can possibly provide. And then also to look and see what other services are available for our students and parents and teachers in regards to the emotional stage of the stressors as well. So probably want to hear more in general about what services we're providing for that particular balance for our students and parents in regards to emotional support as well. So it's a combination of so many different things, but by no means, at least I can say, was a disrespect to our teachers. I respect their work. I certainly do. And I just wanted to say that. So for whatever it means. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Narcy. I think that the board feels exactly the same way. We totally value our teachers, their professionalism, their hard work. And again, unfortunately, people hear this over and over again. We are in unprecedented times, and we just did not anticipate so many changes and challenges, but we are going to work and try to help to find some solutions.
Yeah, and Kate, I might just follow up a little bit because I want to acknowledge the comments that were made. It was a tough decision, but the one that was put in front of the board was about the calendar. And that is definitely in your purview. That's the decision that you need to make. And it came down to about student contact. The issues around teacher workload, that's mine. That is ours as an administrative group to begin to work on. And we are working with the union. Principals have been changing their expectations of like what new things are we having staff do. We're actively, and for weeks now, they've been working to take things off their plate. We met last week with the union. I'll meet with the union on next Monday. One of the first things that we did is provide some flexibility on their upcoming grading day. We've taken and turned 15 classified folks with emergency licensing so that they can sub. We've working with ESD to increase that sub pool. So there's a whole myriad of things that we're working on here to try to work on this teacher workload. But I did just want to point out that's really our responsibility. And again, we will come on December to present to the board kind of some of the things that we're working on. But again, I just want to make sure people understand that we're often working. Your decision was a principled one around student contact time, and I get that. And now we need to go through and start taking a look at all the other things that we can do to try and take down the workload some. So we're often working on that.
Thank you very much, Dave. If there's no more comments, I will move on the agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent items a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately? Okay, if there's no item, then I move to accept the consent agenda as presented. Narcy? Oh,
Yes.
second. Okay. Who seconded it? Mark, did you second it?
Brad.
Okay.
Brad.
Oh, Brad. Thanks, Brad.
Mark can take it if he wants it.
It's okay. Discussion. Any discussion? Okay. Narcy,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. The first presentation tonight we will have is the literacy adoption, and Alana will present.
Hi, guys. All right, let's see here. I'm going to share my screen, get all this worked out here. One sec. All right, there we go. And there we go. You guys can see that? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to be giving you an update on how the adoption has gone so far this year. Our committee has been working since October, and it's an ongoing process throughout the year, and we've had to adjust and be pretty flexible.
Hey, Elena,
Yeah.
we're seeing your notes, the speaking notes on top of the.
Well, that's weird. Well, let's just get rid of this.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So we have had to be flexible as ODE has kind of laid out the timeline this year. It's been a little bit different than in years past for an adoption, but I'm just going to give you hopefully a somewhat brief update, but I'm going to try and give you as much pertinent information as I can while we're doing that. And then just a small update as far as how the literacy coaches are also supporting the work this year and into next year. Okay, so actually I want to quite that side. Why are we talking about the adoption? Well, as you know, you guys have been here much longer than I have in this district, so it's not unknown to anyone that our current core curriculum is outdated. It's no longer in print, it's so outdated, and it's pre-Common Core. So our teachers and our support staff have to work really hard to try and make sure that the curriculum is still relevant and that it meets our kids' needs. So we're doing that, but it's very, very difficult. And one of the reasons why we're doing the adoption is because there is so much to be said for high quality materials. They're incredibly important, and they definitely teacher expertise coupled with high quality materials really does have extreme impact on student learning. So this is an interesting study that came out of RAND, which is kind of a research think tank, and they help develop information and research that supports public policy. But basically they found that when they did a study in 2017, that 96% of teachers use Google to find lessons and materials, and nearly 75% of teachers use Pinterest or teacher pay teachers to find lessons and materials. So the main message here is that when teachers don't have access to great materials, they hunt for them online. And this can often lead to inconsistent quality, which most severely impacts our low-income students and our students of color. So this is a place where we are at this point, where in talking to teachers, they are having to create quite a few of their materials because what we currently have doesn't quite meet their need. Teachers are spending unsurmountable amount of hours per week drawing up resources, And for our new teachers, you can imagine then how difficult this really is for our new teachers who are not even familiar with our current core curriculum. So we have a need, we know there's a need, oh, come on, there we go. Okay, so the importance of high quality materials. A growing and compelling research base suggests that high quality instructional materials can yield improvements in student learning outcomes equal to or greater than many interventions that are often more costly. High quality instructional materials are about bringing equity to the district, a shared experience, creating a floor but not a ceiling around the teaching and learning that happens in our classrooms. So I borrowed a couple of these slides, I will admit, from ODE because I just attended a webinar that they just had that kind of gave us the updates on the adoption. And I thought they had some really good information in these slides. So I just borrowed a couple and then we'll move on to the slides that I have also in my presentation. But this slide goes to another statistic from edreports.org, basically calls out that when teachers are using strong instructional materials that improve the quality of curriculum, it's 40 times more effective than class size reduction. That's a huge statistic. And so it is really important that we as a committee this year try to find the highest quality instructional materials that we can. Okay, this is a little bit kind of nuts and bolts, but it is important. So the distinction between basal and supplemental, ODE vets and approves basal curriculums. So instructional materials means any organized system which constitutes the major instructional vehicle for a given course of study. So we talk about Division 22 requirements, and every district has to have an approved basal curriculum. That's what we're talking about. Only basal instructional programs may be adopted by the State Board of Education. A major instructional vehicle may include such instructional materials as hardbound or softbound books or book sets, print and non-print materials, including electronic and internet or web-based materials or media. Supplemental is everything outside of the basal. So this breaks it down a little bit easier as far as how to distinguish between the two. So when you think about basal, you can think of it as your core curriculum, so your tier 1 instruction. Basal materials are intended to be a substantial and ongoing component of the instruction. Districts are required to adopt basal instructional materials in order to teach to the academic content standards. A couple of examples there, which I previously read. And then supplemental materials are used in conjunction with the basal instructional materials of a course. They contain resources to supplement and or differentiate core instruction. So this is important because in our committee, and then just in general for you guys and for the public or anyone that hasn't gone through an adoption yet, a lot of people just assume that when you look through the vetted materials that ODE has approved, that it's tier 1 through 3. It's core plus supplemental. It's the whole package. Or when publishers come to us with their presentations, that the overall content, including the comprehensive price for everything, that all tiers of instruction are included in that basal and supplemental, and they are not. So we're really looking at, when we talk about what we are looking to adopt, we are looking to adopt a core basal curriculum. And then we will also be looking at supplementals, but those are an add-on, right? And ODE does not vet supplementals. So they vet the core, which is required. Are there questions about the basal versus supplemental before I move on? Okay. All right, so our adoption. So our literacy adoption, these are our goals so far that we have outlined for this year. These are the goals that the committee has come up with so far, and they've evolved a little bit, but they've stuck pretty much the same. So our first goal is to identify a pre-K-6 core dual language literacy curriculum that meets the needs of all of our students. So you'll notice that pre-K is addressed, and also 5th, 6th, so Tom McCall, and dual language. So we have lots of different moving parts here. Our second goal, is to develop a good understanding of research-based literacy instruction and learning, to develop a strong implementation plan that provides ongoing professional learning and support as teachers implement the curriculum, And fourth, strengthen our understanding of equity and accessibility and how it shows up in the classroom. So who is on the team? This is just a quick little brief breakdown of who is on the team. We've got 43 staff members who are on the team. We've got 8 pre-K through second teachers, 12 third through sixth grade teachers, 3 reading specialists, 1 ELL specialist, 2 ELD coaches, 2 literacy coaches, a student success coach, a student service coordinator, equity, ELL, and migrant coordinator. We have 7 principals on the team. Kate is our representative board member. We have 2 Enrique, director of technology, and Deb, and then John and I. And then by subject area, this is a breakdown of representation. 33% of our team has expertise and knowledge in Spanish literacy and dual language. 49% of the team English literacy, 9% of the team ELL, 9% equity, 5% PACS, 5% student services, 5% technology, and 5% district leadership. Any questions about our participants or our team makeup? Okay. All right, so I'm going to actually see if I can pull it up. Well, let me not bump this out. I'm going to share a timeline with you guys, and it's honestly, this even changed last week after I attended the updated webinar from ODE. So feel free to ask me questions if things seem a little general, because in some places they are a little general. So we started off the year, like I mentioned, we met and we were able to meet for a full day on October 8th because it was a teacher in service. So what I'll say is the teachers that have volunteered or have accepted and are willing to participate on our adoption team, I cannot express enough gratitude for the work and the time that they have agreed to put in this year. So they worked their teacher in service with our team. And then October 25th and 26th, we started our evening sessions. And again, we are having to do afternoon evening sessions because of the sub shortage. In usual years, we would have done day sessions throughout the year and we would have gotten subs for teachers, but that's not a possibility. So we have to be really creative. We have to meet after school and go into the evening multiple times a month. So October we met and worked for a couple days. Next Tuesday, the 30th, we will have another work session. We're going to have a couple in December. And in December, we'll also provide an update to all of our district staff, pre-K-6, as far as where we're at with the adoption. We provided an opportunity for updates in our October PD day. And I did meet with a couple buildings at that point, but we will be providing another update then in December. And when we come back in January, we'll have a couple more dates of work time in January. And February hits, and ODE, this is when ODE formally has announced the release of the caravan, is February 1st. Seems a lot later than what it usually is, so we're planning accordingly. Basically, what this says here is that we're going to have a couple of work days in February, and it probably will be more if the caravan is released on time. But what we're looking at is that the pre-K through 6 pilot teachers will review the Oregon materials, and it's all through Zoom this year, which is difficult. I will say it's challenging to look through materials digitally instead of being able to actually thumb through everything and look through everything and have them physically in front of you, but it's doable because I did it this summer when I was on the ODE evaluation team. So it's doable, but we're gonna need to look at everything through a digital lens this year. Then the teachers will participate in formal publisher presentations, and they will identify 1 to 2 publisher materials for selection to pilot. We will submit our pilot order, and then parallel to this, we will also then have the materials that the committee selected for pilot available for viewing in 3 different locations: in the boardroom, at the district office, at Tom McCall, and at Cornelius Libraries. And we will make sure and post that information on the website so those that want to come and see the curriculums that are being piloted have a chance to do so. And there'll be opportunity there to provide feedback. In February or March, we'll be in the thick of the pilot. We will also be meeting 4 to 8 work days, and that sounds like a lot, but remember it's only 3 hours a time frame. So we have to meet more than we would if we just went for a full day. And during that time, we'll have our pilot check-in, we'll have progress updates from our teams, we'll check on the materials and the resources the teachers are using. We'll gather feedback. If there are questions or requested additional support from teachers, we will contact the publisher and have the publisher come back and provide clarification or answers to additional questions on how the resources are being used. This is where our timeline changed a little bit. We were hoping to have a longer pilot, and we may have an opportunity to do so. But as it is right now, if there was February 1st is a hard line as far as not seeing the curriculum before February 1st. And that means that by mid to late March, our committee would need to conduct their final evaluations of the materials using the Instructional Materials evaluation tool. And they would be submitting their evaluation to the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. And at the same time, parallel to this, we would be providing a final update to buildings as far as what the committee had, how they had evaluated and what they had recommended. And that you can see is tentative on there, just because I'm not sure how we're going to get that information out. A lot of these staff updates and staff communication forums, we had planned to go to buildings and do those like after school or during sit time. But we tried to give every spare moment back to buildings and back to teachers. So we're not out there in person as much as we had planned. So we have to think creatively as far as how we're going to get communication to teachers about the ongoing adoption process and what the committee finalizes on. And then late March, early April is where curriculum instruction will bring the recommendation to the board for approval, hopefully. And then in May, we will then be scheduling and having the publishers come in to provide the training to the teachers on the materials. And the schedule will depend on the grade level and the specialty bands, and it will also be dependent on when the publishers are able to schedule the training. So I don't have a lot of detail on that just because we don't exactly know who we're going with yet. This is another area where we're going to have to think creatively. In years past, and when I've been a part of adoption, we've had the publishers come in, we've scheduled a couple, 2 to 3 days, 2 to 4 days, it kind of depends on how the training is structured, and teachers and grade bands get trained on the curriculum during the school day. And then there's, of course, subs. I don't know if that's going to be possible this year to get subs for such large groups of teachers. So we're going to have to think creatively as far as how we get those teachers trained, but we will have to get that done before we go into summer. And then in June is when our initial purchases will be made for all of the materials, the first wave of materials that need to be in teachers' hands by August in service. And once we know more from the publisher as far as when we get closer to actually adopting a curriculum, then we'll be able to start planning with the publisher what an implementation support plan would look like for 22-23. Because as you know, this has been an abnormal year, and I hope that next year is not like this year, but we still are going to need ongoing support and education and training for teachers, not just this spring, but next year as well, as they use the curriculum. And we are going to need to figure out a way to carve time out for teachers and for buildings to receive that support. Questions about the timeline?
Alana, I have a couple questions. And I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself, and I finally figured out how to do it, so I apologize. I saw that it was K through 6, but what about 7th and 8th grade? What about what kind of literacy program do they have?
I honestly, Kate, I can't speak to that because I personally oversee pre-K 6. So I'm not familiar with 7, 8. I do know there was a decision previous to the adoption conversation where 7 through 12 was not going to adopt right now. I don't know if John is on the call.
We'll come back with an answer.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. When I was looking at the wonderful team that you put together, and that's a lot of people, I'm sort of puzzled that you do not have a speech pathologist, because a speech pathologist deals with language and the acquisition of language and a huge expertise in that whole area. So I'm surprised there's no speech pathologist on that team.
Well, we kind of did it a couple of different ways. We reached out to those that had expressed interest or we knew are in specific roles and who wanted to serve on the committee. But then we also reached out to principals and asked for their recommendations. And then we reached out to coordinators and asked, if there was specific roles or specific representation that they would like on the team. I will tell you, Kate, that we did what you're seeing as the final committee is not necessarily everyone that we asked. So I will be really transparent with you. There were a lot of teachers that declined gracefully the invitation because they just didn't feel like it was within their bandwidth this year to serve on the committee. So there were some roles that aren't as filled as others, but then it also was Kelly Trout, who is the special or student services coordinator, is also our liaison, basically overseeing accessibility and accommodations that show up within our core curriculum.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the workload again. I really get it, but I would like to see somehow the speech pathologists review and give some input at some time, because they really, that is their expertise. The development and acquisition of language, and I just would like to see that. And lastly, I'm concerned because of the rush. I was there for the first adoption and the last adoption. And to me, when you look, and you addressed it too, I appreciate you addressing it, the workload of the staff and the subs. Why do we have to get everything done by June 1st? I would think that you would let it move along and then make a final decision and begin like January, a year from now in January. I just think that I don't like rushes. Okay, I like to take time and have people be able to do things well, and I just don't see the rush. And so explain to me why we have to immediately make a decision in June.
I'll take that one, Kate. It's critical that our current core curriculum is inadequate for what we're trying to do, and it's creating issues for our ability to be able to get kids to grade level. Now, with that said, we started this with a normal process in the summer. The pandemic is creating some of the problems that we're coming up against. If we don't start, we have no chance of adopting. If we waited another year to start the process, but I think Elena hinted at it. Yeah, we still don't know how this thing's gonna play out, and we may have to delay. But if we don't get going on this, we're not going to be ready no matter what. And that's why we're continuing to move on it. There are still things that are happening that are getting in the way of us being able to do this the way we want. But we got to keep moving forward on it. And it's why if this were any other adoption, I would have just pushed it to the next year, just because we know it's a challenge right now. But this is too critical for us not to try and keep moving on it. We may get delayed, I don't know, but I know that we can't stop.
Well, I'm not saying stop. I'm just saying take your time with it. And, the board could adopt it in August. We could next fall, have the publisher come and do in service. Hopefully COVID and the shortages will somewhat disappear. I just, and then we could start the adoption in Jan. We could have the materials January, a year from now. It's just a suggestion. I think we don't have any subs for the teachers to review this. So
at this point, again, we don't know what's going to happen in this next 6 months. And that's really why we're going to continue to move forward. And we may get thwarted. I don't know. But I know that if we're not moving forward, we're definitely going to get thwarted.
Yeah, I would say, I agree with you, Kay. It doesn't feel good to rush things. And ODE did they did say in the last update that there was some availability to view curriculums ahead of that February 1st, but it was on, we had to individually request on a case-by-case basis. And so I'm not sure yet, I haven't been able to explore that with Ajali from ODE yet, how cumbersome that is and whether or not we can see the whole comprehensive caravan earlier than February 1st, or if it's just specific curriculums that we would have to handpick. But what I will say is that I wonder about the challenges with starting mid-year because then we're assuming that teachers have the bandwidth in the middle of the year to learn a new program, to have time to process that and to really get the support they need to implement that. We need our coaches and our literacy team to learn the curriculum ahead of when the teachers are going to use it so they can be a direct support. And if we're learning it all at the same time, we don't necessarily have that. But then the other issue is along with a curriculum comes our interventions and comes our assessments. So if at mid-year we transition and we, for the first part of the year, we use interventions, core curriculum and assessments, and then we switch and use different assessments, different interventions, different core, it may also present some challenges and just overall alignment with what curriculum and what instruction we're providing and then how we're assessing it and then the data that we're looking at throughout the year. So a lot of unknowns, good questions. I just don't know how that would look right now. So we're going to keep moving forward. I am going to try and do everything I can to give more time to the pilot. I think the evaluation, like this team will have done, and you will see a lot of groundwork up to when they see the curriculum. So I think that when they actually get to the evaluation part, it might be my blissful naiveness or ignorance, but I'm hoping that we'll be pretty straightforward. It really is the pilot time that I would like to see extended if at all possible.
Thank you. Any other questions for Alana?
I would just say that I think that if the committee doesn't feel like they're ready to make a recommendation, given the timeline, I think we need to recognize that. So, whether they've viewed the materials, they've done the pilot, or maybe they're not comfortable with it. If at any time the committee feels like they're not ready to recommend on the timeline that's been presented, I think we need to recognize that.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I guess for another comment would be you can recommend the curriculum and that piece, but the training and all the other pieces to get teachers ready for implementation would be a question that I guess I can leave it up to the administration about what that transition will look like. But I agree with Kate about being in a hurry. I've gone through a lot of these and in a normal situation, and I would recommend that we look at what our circumstances are and make good recommendations about how that transition will move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so our process, we are going to be using the ODE Instructional Metrics Evaluation Tool. We refer to it as the IMETS a lot. So if you hear that acronym, that's what we're referring to. And all of the information around instructional materials and the toolkit is directly from ODE. So we're using a lot of their guidance. And if you are ever just like dying to look through the ODE Instructional Materials Toolkit, it's linked here. And there are some different buckets, but it has actually some really good information as far as adoption criteria by content area, the Division 22 requirements, their timeline, and then some other guidance on high quality materials. If you wanted to do an independent adoption, it gives you the guidance on that, which I've also been involved in an independent adoption, and it is a lot of work. So there's lots of resources in the materials toolkit, and we're using ODE's materials a lot to just guide our criteria and how we evaluate the curriculum and the metrics and the standards. So all of our evaluation of the curriculums are already, the metrics and criterion are already predetermined by ODE. And like I said earlier, we will be looking for 3 components for the pre-K through 6 literacy curriculum: Spanish dual language, pre-kindergarten, and English language arts. And this is the learnings that we have already engaged in up to now, and we will be going forward with. We're looking at brain research, how the brain best acquires language, our equity policy, culture responsive teaching and materials, elements of high quality curriculums. We've talked about that a little bit. The science of reading, what does the research say? We know we need a curriculum that has more explicit and systematic phonics. We know we need a curriculum that has more oral language development. We've been looking at the instructional models, our dual literacy, our Spanish literacy, and our English literacy models in our district. Spanish and English language similarities and differences. We've been looking at our needs assessment, writing best practices, universal design for learning, and we will be looking at literacy and social emotional learning. So there's a lot of different learnings that the committee is involved in throughout the year in order so they can make the best decisions they can on curriculum. Okay, and last but not least, our instructional coaches. I just wanted to give you a heads up. I don't know if you formally met them or if you've been introduced to them yet, but the literacy coaches, Heather Silva, she's the pre-K2 literacy coach, and she comes from Joseph Gale. And Tisa is the 3rd through 6th literacy coach, and she comes from Echo Shaw. And this is just a breakdown of how they are spending their time right now. And as you can see, pre-K2 is spending a lot of time mentoring, program development, because we don't have materials and resources necessarily already developed in our core curriculum. They're spending about 15% of their time on the impact cycle, which is actual instructional coaching, and professional development, data team meetings, and professional development that they are giving. So this is just a breakdown a little bit of what they're doing right now. And by grade level team, you can see that Heather in pre-K2 is spending a ton of time in 1st grade, 2nd grade, and kindergarten. And that makes sense when we know about what we see from the pandemic. She's also supporting about 65% new teachers versus 35% returning teachers. And Tisa, our 3rd through 6th grade coach, she is supporting a little bit more balanced: new teachers 45%, returning teachers 55%. And by grade level, again, it's a little bit in the upper grades, it's a little bit more evenly dispersed. And she also, her coaching time mirrors very much what Heather in pre-K through 2nd. She's spending a lot of time mentoring, and we call this we distinguish mentoring from coaching, because coaching is specifically using the impact cycle and the cycle of instructional practice with teachers. Mentoring is kind of all those other things, from helping teachers sitting side by side them and planning their literacy block, helping them with lesson design, templates, resources, helping them create tools, helping them understand assessments and how to use assessments, interpret the data, all that kind of stuff. So you can see that their coaching and their mentoring time takes up at least about 50% of their job. And then they spend some other portions of their job, program development, providing PD, data team meetings, and then coaching continuously. This is their own professional development. So they are supporting quite a bit with literacy this year, not just instructional coaching with the impact cycle, but also materials and resources, and helping new teachers get off the ground, and just helping everyone this year get through the year with instruction. All right, that was a lot of information. I'm sorry, I tried to talk real quick, I know.
Oh, you did a great job. You did a great job. I really like those last slides. I think that's really informative to seeing exactly what and how that's broken out. I haven't seen that before. That was very good. Thank you. Any questions for Alana? Okay.
Thank you, Alana.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Darcy.
All right. We'll move on to our first action item, which is the Mid-Columbia bus driver wage increase, and Eileen will be presenting.
Thank you, Kate. So tonight we have the proposal to increase the bus driver wage by $4 per hour. This is to help increase recruiting and retaining drivers. Right now, getting students, Four Scope School District students to school safe, secure, and on time is Mid-Columbia's first priority. However, like many school districts right now in our area and in our state, we are all facing driver shortages in some capacity or another. This for us has created delays in routes to the start of the school year. We've had to combine routes, and we've even had to cancel some after school events and activities because of the driver shortage. Currently, our starting wage is $17 an hour. This increase would bring that starting wage up to $21 an hour. These positions to be a bus driver for schools require a commercial driver's license, physical exams, driving and criminal records, drug screenings, all kinds of additional things. And so with these requirements at our current wage base, it's creating a difficult time recruiting and retaining our current driver space. In surveying 25 other local districts, we looked at different ones, both local and comparable in our area. And the average wage for a starting driver is $20.19 per hour from all of the 25 that we looked at. The highest wage was Portland Public at $26.33. They just increased theirs this fall. And then the lowest one was $16 an hour. Ours for Four Scope School District, we are currently sitting at the second to the lowest position out of all of those 25 that we surveyed. So our $17 per hour is that second to the lowest. Our comparables that we looked at included Beaverton, Hillsborough, McMinnville, Lake Oswego, Canby, Sherwood, Woodburn, Corvallis, and then many others in our area. Several of the districts have recently in the last 2 months increased their driver's wage base just to be able to help recruit and retain drivers. With this, our goal would be to hopefully gain some drivers back that we have lost because of the wages being low, and or be able to recruit more drivers from our community, and then also maintain those that we currently have in place. Over the last 14 months, over the last few months, we've lost 14 drivers. Half of that was because of they went and found higher paying jobs. 30% of that was because of COVID concerns or vaccine mandate. And then the remainder was because of personal reasons or undisclosed. So at this time, we're still 7 drivers short of where we would like to be in a normal school year and a normal time. So with that 7 drivers short, we are only 86% staffed. And it's continuing to cause difficulties in just trying to balance and manage daily operations. Midco staff have been, the office staff and have been driving. They've brought in individuals from other districts to help support us. And so we're really looking at trying to find a way that we can help recruit and retain those drivers that we have. This cost would increase our total contract by 12.4%. It's about $270,000 between now and the end of the school year to do increase it by the $4 across all of our drivers for the rest of the year. But this is 70% reimbursable through the state school fund. And so the district's impact this year would be $81,000. So at this time, what we are asking is for the board to approve a contract amendment with Mid-Columbia Bus to increase our drivers' wage bases by $4 an hour to help with that recruiting and retention.
Thank you, Eileen. Any questions for Eileen?
I have a question, Eileen. If we move to the 21, I think I heard you say that we're currently second from the lowest, the second lowest in terms of our hourly. If we move to the 21, does that, I mean, do you know where that moves us to? I guess I can ask it that way.
That's a great question, Mark. Yes. Our $17 an hour was the second to the lowest out of the 25 districts surveyed. Bringing us up to $21 an hour puts us right at the average of those 25 districts.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Any other? Go ahead.
This is Narcy. Are there benefits with these positions?
They do have benefits. I don't have them here, but I'm more than willing to get some information for you if you wanted it, but they do have benefits or options.
Are these full-time positions or part-time?
Some,
So,
Yeah.
okay, it's mixed. Okay,
Kate,
go ahead.
quick question. What I would want to know, if we voted to do this, Eileen, is there a way we can kind of quantify whether it made a difference or not between now and the end of the school year to make a decision whether we want to continue with this kind of level of pay in our contract in the future? Does that make sense?
We could definitely keep track of the new drivers coming on board, the ones that are staying, if people are leaving, the reasons why. So Midco can keep track of that and work, document it so we can make sure that we are really, make sure we're hitting the mark in the area.
Right. When does the contract come due?
I believe we have another 2, maybe 3 years on our contract. I'd
So
have to look.
this will be from now until then?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
our current contract increases by CPI every year. So that's typically what the driver's wage rate increases every year is by that CPI.
Okay, thank you.
And then Eileen, I just have one more question just about the overall budget. So it seems to me like it's an add of 81,000, but we're able to, I guess, absorb that if that's,
Yes.
Okay.
With the new state school fund estimates that came out, the state as a whole, I'm trying to think how to explain this. The state as a whole had less student enrollment statewide. And so that took the state school fund and spread it over fewer students. So our per dollar amount went up with this last estimate. So we do have some flexibility.
That's right. You talked about that in the financial committee, I think. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, if that's all the questions, I will make a motion. I move to approve the Mid-Columbia bus driver wage increase by $4 per hour to support driver retention and district-wide transportation requirements. Do I have a second?
I second.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Okay, I will do a roll call vote. Val,
Yes.
Narcy,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And I'm a yes also. The motion passes. The next action item for tonight is the Budget Appropriations Transfer Resolution number 21-22 R01. And Eileen will present this one also.
Thank you, Kate. So I have tonight for you a budget appropriations transfer resolution. This is transferring $200,000 of appropriations in the grant fund and the support services function to the grant fund enterprise community function. And so what this is doing is it's the summer grants that we got this last summer from ODE to do all of our K-8 summer enrichment program. And then that had a childcare component to it. The childcare costs of what we supported in childcare for students that were enrolling in the summer programs is supposed to be expended under the enterprise fund function. So we're just moving and transferring appropriation from support services to enterprise to account for that childcare grant.
Questions for Narcy, I mean, not for Narcy, but questions for Eileen. Okay, if there's no questions,
So
I move-
moved, Kate.
well, let me read it. Let me be appropriate here. I move to approve the budget appropriations transfer resolution number 21-22 R01 as presented. And Brad made the motion, the seconded, and we'll have a roll call. Okay. Did I do that right? Mark,
Yes.
Fred,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
and Narcy.
Yes.
And I'm a yes also. We have another action item, and this one, Eileen, you're also going to present this one too.
So the second budget appropriation transfer resolution tonight is for the Viking House Fund. And this resolution is to transfer appropriations from the Community Services Fund of $1,000 to the Support Services function. This is no increase or no change. It's just transferring it from one function level to another for the Viking House Fund, but it's really to support the scholarship. Each year, the Viking House gives out one scholarship to students. And this year we had 2 students claim their scholarship in a single year. So it's to cover that 2 students applying to utilize their funds this year. It's $1,000 transfer.
Okay. Questions? Okay, thank you, Eileen. I move to approve the budget appropriations transfer resolution number 21-22 as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. We'll do a roll call vote. Brad,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Narcy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. This motion passed. The next item is it is the bond consulting service contract, and this is Dave and Eileen.
So I can go ahead and start with this one, Dave, if you want. Okay. The Fort Scrub School District has finished its long-range facilities plan last spring of 2021 with our community. We're now taking a look at the next steps in our bond planning process to engage with our community around a specific bond package. The long-range facility plan had a few options that were preferred options. And so now we're really looking at doing community outreach and engagement and narrowing down what that package looks like. Wright Public Affairs is based in Portland. Jeremy Wright has supported 24 other Oregon schools and helped pass more than $4.88 billion in school bond and levy since 2015. Wright Public Affairs would help the district to create a comprehensive bond communications and engagement plan while responding to our specific community needs. The plan has 3 phases. One that starts with outreach and options, so engaging with our community in the bond development process, and then listening, refining, and finalizing, so taking feedback from our community and drafting proposals and refining those proposals to determine what the community prioritizes and determines as a viable bond. And then lastly, educating, motivating, and inspiring our community. So reaching voters all across the district throughout the next year. They would help the district in our community outreach plan. They'd provide us with district voter demographics, communications and messaging, development of the bond package, bond language, and polling and research. This process is expected to begin next month and run all the way through next November. The overall plan with Jeremy Wright or Wright Public Affairs is estimated at $75,000. It is budgeted in the board's general fund budget for 21-22. So we did build that in anticipation. So right now, administration is recommending the board to approve the contract with Wright Public Affairs for bond consulting. Any questions?
I have a question, Eileen. So the $75,000 amount, how do I say this? It looks like the $75,000 amount is budgeted to be, it has to be spent by well, when does it have to be spent by? It's a 2021-22 budget. So
right?
That have to be spent by June and then they're working to November. Is that right? Or how does this work?
Yeah, great question, Mark. In our budget, we have $200,000 set aside for bond planning and everything that we need to do between now and June. This would come out of that for the services that are done between now and June.
Okay.
But then we would have to rebudget in the spring for 22-23 fiscal year on anything that carries over. So this contract and the 75,000 will go between the 2 years.
Okay.
Eileen,
Mhm.
did we use him before the last time we did this, or was this somebody else?
I don't believe we used a third party for some of this. I think we contracted out components of it, but not to do the whole communication plan. David Warner and me and Dave Parker, we weren't here at that time. So we're all new to this process.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
Connie Potter. Connie
Mhm.
Potter out of the communication. She
But we
sort of organized it.
We worked with the consultant. I don't know who
Yeah.
it was. But
Yeah.
I guess the question is, we've done our research, we've checked his credentials, we've talked to other districts that have used him, we've done all the information, that's kind of information prior to this, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And if you look around the state, many of the winning bond measures or Jeremy has had has done consulting for them.
So I was reading through that earlier today and I noticed, the ones that they promoted or worked on and passed were listed. I don't know if the ones that they worked on and didn't pass, I don't know what that number might be. Do you know what I mean, Dave? So, just.
We talked to Jeremy about one in particular that didn't pass.
Okay.
And, talk through some issues and some things that were happening in the community and stuff. So I think he's got a pretty good handle on it, pretty open on, what works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
A question, do we know what other districts near us might be going through the same process, but obviously with are we competing, I guess, with this? Is this company doing anything else with anybody else locally?
Yeah. So right now I know Jeremy's working with, what did he say? Roseburg. And one other district right now for spring bonds.
I believe it was David Douglas.
David Douglas, I think that's right. Yeah, for spring bonds. I'm not sure who he's planning on working with yet for fall bonds yet, next year, but he does do a couple at a time, I believe.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I will make a motion to approve the contract with Wright Public Affairs for bond consulting as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, I'll do a roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Narcy,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. Thank you, Eileen. The next is a future action item, and it's policy ACB, all students belong. And Oswald will present.
Yeah, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah. So as you probably know, last spring, our school board adopted the all students belong policy, which required all district ESDs and charter schools to adopt a policy prohibiting symbols of hate and addressing bias incidents. And then later, the Oregon legislature adopted House Bill 2627, which placed many of the same requirements in a statute. And then finally, the Oregon administrative rule was amended again to align more closely with legislative action. So what we have here today is, you know, a proposal for you to take a look. I mean, I believe that Kathy already shared some documentation with you. The general impact of the law has not changed. The policy right now has some minor changes for you to consider. So all we're doing today is just put it in your hands for your consideration. And hopefully you have the opportunity to review and make a decision on that on the future.
Thank you. Any questions from Oswald? Okay, thank you, Kathy, also for putting it in the packet for us to review.
If you do have questions, get a hold of me or Osvaldo, and we'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thanks, Dave. The next item is future board items. There's a couple things we would like to add discussion to the December 13th meeting regarding the virtual board meetings and when to return in person. So we will do that on December 13th. And also we will be having some information provided on the workload of our teachers and what the administration is doing to help them. And I think, unless anyone else wants to add to our agenda items down the way, I mean, not the agenda items, what do I mean on the let me pull my sheet out here. Yeah, the agenda topics. I know that we added Val substitute shortage, which will be down the road. We don't have a date yet. So if no one has anything else, I will adjourn the meeting for tonight and wish all of you a restful and happy holiday, and stay healthy and enjoy your families.
Thank you. Good night, Kate.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.